about to take a midday nap, or about to go to bed when you're watching this video, we don't care. We're just glad that you're watching. You could be doing so many other things right now, and you chose to be here with us. So thank you for taking the time to make us part of your day and a part of your life. My name's Rachel, and I'm here once again to usher us into the finale of our series, You're Not the Boss of Me. Repeat after me this one last time. How to say no to the emotions that compete for control. We've been talking about emotions like guilt, envy, anger, and fear that we can all clearly see when we stop and look, but today is going to be a little different. Today we're going to be talking about some different emotions. The ones we all have that disguise themselves as other things so that they can sneak by us undetected. These emotions are dangerous because they become sort of an undercover boss of us, and we can completely miss them. So, get out your detective gear and start singing the Inspector Gadget theme song. Let's get the drop on what's going on with Bridge Church.
As my friends back in Virginia would say, happy fall, y'all. My name's Angel, and you're about to get the drop. Thanks so much for watching. We think there's a purpose while you're listening today, and we really hope you get something from it. But we believe that circles are even better. If you don't have a circle, join our Sunday circle. It's 4 p.m. right here at my house. You can find our address and any info on our website by clicking the Circles tab. If you're not ready for a focused circle, I get it. That could be a difficult place to walk into. Instead, come hang out with us at 5 p.m. It's a relaxed time of fun to get to know people before you start just sharing your life. You can find out all that information on our website under the Events tab. By now, everyone's back to school, whether it's online or in person. It's just really different this year. If there's anything going on, don't keep it to yourself. Please let us know how we can help. All the ways to reach us can be found on our Facebook page. Want more information? Check out our Facebook page or bridgedayton.com. And now here's John with the finale of You're Not the Boss of Me.
Today I want to wrap up talking about some undercover emotions. Now these are like destructive emotions that disguise themselves as virtues. They look like compassion or sympathy, maybe care or concern, sometimes even love. But we all know that what we consider nice many times isn't all that nice. Care doesn't always feel caring, love doesn't always feel loving, because what love actually requires of us many times feels nothing like love. If you're a parent, you know this, right? If you're going to be a good parent, at some point you have to do something that is going to make your child so mad that they may even say, I hate you. But as parents, we have to be willing to face that anger in order to do the necessary thing. Now, if you're not a parent yet, you were possibly on the receiving end of this as a child. Your parents did things in different seasons of your life that made you hate them. You were so angry in that moment. But as you look back later on, like you think or thought, I'm so glad that they did that. Now, here's where all this intersects with us today, right? Fear of rejection, discomfort with conflict, or even avoiding conflict, or apprehension around confrontation, these are emotions that disguise themselves as sensitivity or concern or sometimes even love, when in fact they are just fear, discomfort, or apprehension. So ask yourself, do you want fear and discomfort and apprehension to be the boss of you? No, of course not. Fear we talked about last week, but discomfort and apprehension, they say things like, oh, I can't do that, it makes me feel really uncomfortable, or I'd just rather not do that because it might turn out bad. Now, you don't want those thoughts to be the boss of you, and here's the challenge in all this, especially for those of us who are Jesus followers, right? In order to love other people, to be for them what they need us to be for them, in order to be for them what Jesus, as we're going to see in a few minutes, calls and commands us to be, we have to recognize these emotions for what they really are. And we have to tell them, you're not going to be the boss of me. And I'm going to do what I need to do for the sake of this person or these people, even though it doesn't feel good to me right now. And there's one more emotion that kind of hides undercover here, and it's called indifference. Now, this is an ugly little thing because this isn't really like an emotion. Indifference actually is a lack of concern or emotion where really there should be some. But indifference is kind of embarrassing, so we don't want to own it. In fact, very few people will look at someone and say, that's not good, she's making some terrible mistakes, it's headed in a horrible direction, but I don't care what happens to her. Very few people will say, he's making some huge relational mistakes, but I don't care what happens to him. If their marriage keeps going this way, it's going to destroy their marriage, but I don't care what happens to their marriage. Few people will say that stuff. What we actually say is, I see what's going on, but I shouldn't interfere. So I'm pretending to be sensitive, but really we're just hiding other emotions. Or we'll say things like, well, they haven't even asked for my input. I'm just being sensitive. I'll wait until they ask. No, we're just hiding the truth with sensitivity. Or this is the big one, right? It's none of my business. I know they're going to regret that parenting decision, that financial, relational, professional decision, whatever it may be. But you know what? It's none of my business. So here's the big question. Do you want to be so emotionally neutral because it's none of my business, or they didn't ask me, that it becomes the boss of you? Think about it like this. When you need someone, and you will if you haven't already, to mind your business because you're not doing such a good job minding your business, are you going to want your friends to give into this fear, discomfort, apprehension, or being indifferent? Or are you going to want them to step up and interfere in your business, especially, right, if it keeps you from making things worse or making just a huge mistake in life? The answer is really obvious here. Even though it's uncomfortable, in those moments, we need people to step up into our lives, to step in and to say what will appear to be the insensitive and the uncaring thing. Again, if you're a Jesus follower, you can't listen to those unhealthy voices because there's another voice that has already spoken into this, and that is Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And it's really important for us to think about him as a good shepherd for what we're going to talk about today. Because his instructions don't always feel good, but he has our ultimate good in mind. So for example, one day Jesus is speaking, and this was his bottom line for the day. He said, if your brother or sister, and he's talking about like somebody you know, this is about relationship, not about family. If someone you know sins, go and point out their fault. To which someone watching right now may say, well, that's reason enough not to ever follow Jesus, because who does that, right? Well, people who truly care. People who decide that discomfort is worth putting up with, if that's what it takes to really love someone. So I'm going to back up now, and I'm going to give some context for that phrase that Jesus just used, because Jesus takes his audience on a really long journey through some really important things, and then he stops on that idea. And as harsh as that idea of confronting someone sounds, I think when you hear the whole conversation, at the end of it, you'll more than likely look at it and think, that makes a whole lot of sense, even though I don't really want to do that. So here's how the conversation went as Matthew tells us. He says, at that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And the kingdom of heaven, it doesn't mean heaven in the sense of like someplace out there somewhere. The kingdom of heaven, as Jesus is teaching it and has taught it, was a new value system. And it was in conflict with the kingdoms of this earth. So they're asking, in this new kingdom, Jesus, who's going to be the greatest? And of course they're hoping to hear one of their own names, but instead, he, Jesus, called a little child to him and placed the child among them. Now, they had to be just like really confused at this point. So Jesus then says, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. He's got their attention now, right? Then he starts this teaching that is ultimately going to end in that uncomfortable command to confront. If anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, so he's expanding his audience here, beyond children to anyone who has begun to follow Jesus. And stumbling is like to fall down, to get tripped up, to get thrown off course. So he's saying if anyone comes along and causes someone who's just beginning to believe, just beginning to get life together and refocus to get off course, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Now, this is hyperbole, right? Jesus is making an extreme case because he's making an extreme point. Then he says this, woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. In other words, there are going to be things that are going to come along in our lives that cause us to trip up. And these things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come. This is important. Jesus says it's one thing for someone to get tripped up because of something that comes along in life, whether it's an illness, a job loss, something that we can't control. And in dealing with it, that person loses their way for a while. That stuff's going to happen. But woe to the person who is a cause of someone else losing their way. This is Jesus' way of saying, don't be someone else's mistake. Don't be someone's regret. Don't be the reason that they lost their way. When they tell their story and they bring your name up, hope that it's not because, well, things were going really good until I met, and then they say your name. Jesus punctuates how big of a deal this is to him as he keeps going. And now he's going to talk about us getting in our own way. Again, this is very extreme, so don't turn it off after you hear this. You need to wait until the end, hear the whole thing. If your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. The word throw is key to this, and I'll explain why in just a moment. And again, remember, this isn't literal. His point is this. If there's something that you have control over that has the potential to trip you up in life, deal with it. If you can stop a season of your life that you will have to go back and relive over and over and over, or if there's anything that is tripping you up right now, Jesus says, get rid of it. The reason he talks about this in this extreme measure is because God loves you so much that he would do anything to keep you from getting tripped up. In terms of your moral life, your finances, your marriage, your relationships, really any area of your life. This is a big deal because to Jesus, we are a big deal. Then he says, it is better for you to enter life with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into the fire of hell. Now, the translators took liberty with this word translated hell. The actual Greek word is Gehenna, which is Gehenna. It's a place in the valley of Hinnom, just south of Jerusalem. This was their like trash dump where the filth and dead carcasses of the city were thrown out and everything was burned. It was rotten and smelly and it was always on fire. This was a symbol of chaos to them. This was imagery about what can happen in our lives. And again, we see this word thrown. He's saying that it's better for you to throw things out of your life than for your entire life to be thrown into chaos. Because when your life is thrown into chaos, it becomes hell on earth. And isn't it true that you wish you could go back in time and throw something out of your life? Something that eventually threw your life into chaos because you didn't get rid of it at that moment? We could go on for hours and we could talk about scenarios that we all look back on and wish that we had thrown something away instead of embracing it or moving forward with it. So why does Jesus say to take this extreme measure of throwing it away? Because he loves you extremely. So recap up to this point. Here's what Jesus has said. There are going to be things that come along in life, so watch out. Don't be the thing that comes along that causes someone else to regret. And lastly, if there's something that you're involved in that you can get rid of it. It's better for you to get rid of it than for you to be thrown your entire life into chaos. And then Jesus switches gears just a little bit. He says, what do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, so he's getting them involved here, he's presenting an idea that they're very familiar with. 100 sheep, one stumbles away, gets lost, loses its way. Will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go look for that one that wandered off? Now, this makes complete sense to them. It's weird to us, but this is just what you did at that time. Then he says this, and if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. Now, if you've ever lost a credit card or your debit card, you've experienced this. All of a sudden, when that happens, you're looking and thinking about where you last saw it. You're hyper-focused on that one card. You don't go to your wallet or purse and get out the other, 5 cards, 6 cards that you have and think, well, at least all the other ones are here. There is no comfort in the ones that you have when there's one that you've misplaced. The lost one gets your undivided attention, and then when you finally find it, it's a celebration. Because when you lose something of value and then you find it, your emotions are focused on what you lost that you found. This is what Jesus is talking about. The person who has stumbled away being found. And if this is true about you today, God is excited if you're taking steps to figure it out and to come back. He's been pursuing you. In fact, it says in the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of those little ones should perish. And if Jesus would have stopped here, we would just be super excited. But Jesus isn't done. In fact, he's about to tell us that we, as his followers, if we are Jesus' followers, are involved in this process. But we generally don't want to be involved in this process, right? We want God to do it. He says, though, when you see someone you know, someone you care about, and they sin, they wander off, they get tripped up, right? Go and point out their fault. To which we think, well, I don't go, John, I pray. We pray that someone would go. Or that, you, God, would miraculously do something. And Jesus is like, no, maybe you pray about how to go, but you go. We, as Christians, unfortunately, default to just praying. Worse than that, we actually default to gossip in the form of prayer requests. Guys, please pray for my friend Rob. He's having a hard time. I won't say his last name, but everyone knows him. His last name starts with an S, right? And Jesus is saying, don't be gossiping and, praying about the situation. Pray about how to go, but go. But Jesus, I want to be sensitive and give him his privacy. And Jesus says, you're not being sensitive, you're being insensitive. Go whether you feel like it or not. Don't tell anyone. Don't share a prayer request. In fact, he covers that. Just between the two of you. Go just between the two of you. And our response is, well, it's none of my business. But Jesus responds and says, I just made it your business. Their business is your business because their business is my business. And I love them and I'm sending you. And we're like, ugh, I don't know if that's the loving thing to do, Jesus. Well, that's the most loving thing to do. He goes on with some good news. If they listen to you, you have won them over. And whenever they tell their story, they will bring up your name and they will say, then Jill showed up and we had an awkward conversation. And at first I was so mad, but then I realized, you know what? She's right. And I confessed and I broke up with him and I decided not to do that thing and I decided not to spend that money. I was really mad, but then I realized that really, they just loved me. And forever, we became a permanent, positive part of someone's story. Great. So we can just stop there, right, Jesus? No, because rarely it works out that way. There are few happy endings in the first step. So, if they will not listen, because the possibilities are that they won't listen. And we think, well, if they won't listen, well, I've still done my part, right? I confronted them. They may not ever speak to me again, so I'm done, and I get extra credit, actually. I'm probably the best Christian that there is because I did what very few Christians will do, right? Jesus is like, nope. I want you to go back and this time take one or two others along so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. I mean, give it a rest, Jesus. What is this, court? Who does this seriously? Good shepherds, your heavenly Father, people who don't hide behind sensitivity and prayer requests and giving people space, when in fact we're just scared, uncomfortable, apprehensive, or indifferent. That's who does that. If they still refuse to listen, and it's like, really? Is this still going on? Jesus, this is just getting silly. If they still won't listen, tell it to the church. Now, the English Bible, again, translated this word ecclesia as church, and it never should have anywhere in the Bible. It should read, tell it to the assembly, because when Jesus was teaching this, there was no church. Jesus was talking about their small Jewish communities where everyone knew everyone and kind of already knew everyone's business. And he says, if they continue to wreck and ruin their life, take them to the people who know them and care about them. This is why circles are so important to us here at Bridge Church. We would never bring people in front of the entire church. That would be weird. And I've seen this done and seen it work well, where a community of people, they show up for one person because they love them and they just can't let it go. But if the outcome still isn't good, Jesus says, if they refuse to listen, even to the assembly, even to the community, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. And this has been talked about as like shunning someone or exiling them, but that is not what this is talking about. What this is saying is so important, so vital. When we confront someone because of something going on in their life where they're like hurting themselves, the assumption is that they see the world the way that we see the world. Every time you confront someone, you are assuming a shared worldview. You're assuming shared values. And Jesus says, when it finally occurs to you that you're not on the same page when it comes to worldview, when it comes to values, then use a different approach. You approach them then as someone who doesn't share your worldview, doesn't share your values, and you back off. Now, it's not any of your business. We get this completely mixed up. Because when we see someone doing something that's going to mess up their life, generally, we don't do anything. And Jesus says, well, we need to do something immediately. And then, eventually, we may not do anything. But you don't get to that point until I went, and then we went, and then the community went, and clearly they just don't care, and clearly what we want for them and what they want for them is very different. So we will treat them like someone who has a different worldview. Do we still love them? Absolutely, of course. We love them differently. And I know that this can feel kind of cringy, but we do this as followers of Christ with each other, not just with anyone, because this is what Jesus did for us. And we do this whether we feel like it or not. This is how we uncover the real emotions, covered up with words like sensitivity, concern, kindness, or even love. And we say to the real emotions, fear, discomfort, apprehension, and indifference, you will not be the undercover boss of me. Now listen, I know this is hard. I know this can be scary. I know this can feel uncomfortable. I know you can be worrisome over this. So make sure you jump into a circle. Talk openly and honestly about your feelings with this, with your community there. And if you do, you will never let any of these emotions be the boss.